Bienvenidos a todos. Welcome, Comadres and Friends. I'm the project manager for Las Comadres and Friends National Latino Book Club, and on behalf of our leadership team, it is a pleasure to welcome you to tonight's podcast as we celebrate our 20th anniversary. For 2 decades, we've had the privilege of championing Latina authors, connecting readers across the country, and building a vibrant, supportive literary community. Your enthusiasm and continued support have made the journey possible, and we're excited for many more years of sharing powerful stories and unforgettable voices together. We'd also like to extend a warm welcome to everyone joining us through our live Twitter chat at Read Latino Lit. We're glad you are part of the conversation. Tonight, please help us welcome authors Quiara Alegria Hudes and Lauren Pico. Please join us in welcoming them. Before we begin, just a few quick housekeeping notes. Please keep yourselves on mute during the program. You're welcome to keep your video on if you'd like. We recommend using speaker view, though gallery view works just as well. And if you have any questions or comments, please share them in the chat. We'll do our best to address them during the discussion. And now, to begin, let's take a moment to reflect on the history of the book club. Take it away, Nydia.
Thank you, Comadre Tess. All right, so welcome, Comadres and friends. I'm Nydia Marcella. I'm the book club membership coordinator. Our book club began in July 2004 in the apartment of Maria Ferrer in New York City. But after a brief pause, Nora Comstock reimagined and relaunched the organization nationwide. Her vision was to promote Latina authors, bring our community into bookstores, and support our writers. In October of 2006, we began hosting teleconferences, and now in our 20th year, we continue to share work by Latina authors with book lovers everywhere. Our book club and podcast are designed to encourage everyone, not just Latinos, to read more Latina literature, explore diverse cultural perspective, and gain deeper insight into Latino root and heritage. We are creating a space where readers can explore the rich inner worlds of Latino writers through their written work. We currently have book clubs in 12 cities across different time zones. We invite you to join a local chapter that fits your schedule. If your city isn't represented, we welcome your help in starting a new club. For more information, I'm going to put the website on the chat so you guys can check it out. All right? That's it. Spread the word and invite others to join our literary community. Comadre Karen, take it away.
Welcome, Comadres and friends, to our May 2026 podcast. I'm Karen Gonzalez, Assistant Coordinator for the Las Comadres and Friends Book Club, Denver Comadres Book Club Facilitator, and co-founder of the Colorado Alliance of Latino Mentors and Authors. Thank you for joining us tonight. Our first interview is with Quiara Alegria Hudes, the Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright of The Water by the Spoonful and the musical In the Heights, which won the Tony Award for Best Musical. Her 2025 fiction debut, The White Hot, is currently shortlisted for the Carol Shields Prize for Fiction and the Penn Falker Award for Fiction. A daughter of the Puerto Rican diaspora, Quiara was born and raised in West Philly and now lives in New York. Interviewing Quiara is Comadre Kim Montoya, a native of Colorado and retired from federal government in 2017 with 35 years of public service. She is an active member of the Las Comadres Denver Book Club. Kim was nominated in 2021 for the Nora Award for Comadre Community Service, and for the last 10 years, Kim has been a judge for the International Latino Book Awards. She currently works part-time and volunteers with the local communities in Colorado Springs, Colorado, specifically Latino and women organizations. She hopes one day to write her life story. Take it away, Comadre Kim.
Thank you, Comadre Karen. First, it's a pleasure to meet you, Ms. Hudes, and an honor to be interviewing you today. Thank you for being part of our podcast. There are several questions our readers want to ask, and hopefully we can get to all of them. To start, your book, The White Hot, was timely
Kim,
as
excuse
Mother's
me.
Day passed.
Kim,
Uh-huh.
do you have your phone on also? Because there's a big echo.
No, I don't. Hold on.
Use us. Or is your program open twice? Okay, try it again, please. Okay, you could turn your sound on. We'll see if it went away.
How is that?
I think that's better.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Maybe you want to start over again, so we just take it from the top. Thank you, Quiara.
Thank you. Sorry for the interruption. To start, your book, The White Hot, was timely because of Mother's Day just passed. And it's a good book to read, given that the story had to do with mother and daughters, intergenerational household. We have several questions, and then I'm hoping we're going to get to all of them. So first question is, how did you come up with the title, The White Hot? In the book, you define it as volcanic rage. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. It's so nice to be here. And Kim, thank you for preparing this conversation. I see a fantastic writer who I'm a fan of. Dalma is also logged in here, so this is a wonderful crowd. I don't know if you've ever featured Dalma's books before, perhaps.
Yes.
She's an incredible writer. So to answer your question about the title, I was very torn on the title, and my editor convinced me. He felt it was a strong title. As those who have read the book already know, the white hot is how she describes the sensation. She has this vision and this feeling of heat, this vision of kind of a white, blinding, milky light. And this is how she experiences rage. But what we come to find out, and this is really a book about what does someone do when they're completely, what does a woman do? What does a mother do? What does a daughter do when she is cut off from her life force? And I think what happens with the white hot and what she discovers is that it's been pigeonholed in her life. Her life force has been backed into a corner. And so it always comes out as rage. That is what her experience is. She's scared. She's trying to protect herself. She was not able to protect her mother. She's very nervous. Her daughter is growing into the same kind of too smart for her own good young woman, and she's not going to be able to protect her. But what happens by the end is when she gets to go and live life on her own terms, even for just a moment, that white hot transfers. It's not just rage, it's actually her life force. But she had so few outlets for that. She was very imbalanced. And so I believe that by the end, the white hot is her spirit. It is her rage, but it's also her love. It's also her curiosity. It's also her participation in the universe around her. So it becomes more than just her rage by the end.
Okay. So do you see rage in the novel as destructive, transformative, or both?
I don't know how many people were participating in the book club that are here tonight when I did my book, My Broken Language. That was my memoir. So that was about my girlhood in a very matriarchal Puerto Rican family in Philadelphia. And there's a chapter there that I think encapsulates my feeling about this, which was my mother comes from Arecibo, which is fairly cosmopolitan in Puerto Rico, but they were land workers. They had a farm, and she talks to me about that you have a hoe to break the dry earth, and you break it and you shatter the earth. This is in my real life. You shatter the earth so that you can plant new seeds and new growth is possible. And so this is something my mom told me about when I was growing up. And I didn't grow up in Arecibo. I grew up in West Philadelphia. I grew up with, a cheesesteak place on the corner and a subway, well, not a trolley going by. She grew up in a very different world than I did. But I saw, oh my gosh, the sidewalk is cracking and the earth is coming through. That little dandelion broke the concrete. How did it do that? And so I do think that the rage is part of a spectrum of human experience, and that the breaking of something can create pain, it can create a scar, it can create a rupture, but it can also create the conditions for growth. And that sometimes you have to be a sword of truth in life, and you have to cut with that sword in order for the truth to grow.
I like that. You chose to write this book in the letter format, from a mother to a daughter. Why did you choose to write the novel this way? And was it challenging for you to write it?
No, it wasn't challenging. It felt natural. In part, I have spent about 20 years of my life, of my adult womanhood, working in theater. And when you're writing a play, the play really has to speak to the back row. Subtlety doesn't read very well on stage. And for me, the novel was an opportunity to whisper directly into someone's ear. I remember when I was 17 and I really fell in love with literature for the first time, I felt that I was having very private, intimate conversations with artists and thinkers across time. Reading Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison, I felt that he was speaking directly to me, and so I wanted to embrace that ability to whisper directly in someone's ear. And so I did that as a writer with the reader, and also the main character, April Soto, did that with her daughter. She was able to whisper directly in her daughter's ear with the letter format.
I really like that, that you're whispering to someone, because we all want to do that some time in our life to someone, or you want to share something with someone or experience or what they're feeling, and you don't always do it the right way, I guess. So I like that whisper.
It's one of my, if I can follow up on that statement, Kim, it's one of my favorite things about reading fiction also is I feel like it's one of the most private experiences you can have. It's more private than a conversation you have with a lover or with a child or with a sister. You're just sharing privately your innermost thoughts. And so I put down some of my guard when I'm a reader of fiction. I certainly let go of shame. I let go of the kind of noisy identity politics of, am I enough of this? Am I enough of that? And I'm just myself in a safe way, because I don't have to present myself to anyone else. And so that's one of the reasons I love to read.
Yeah, and April had to do that. Her daughter Noelle, she had to somehow find a way to talk to her, explain to her why she left, and it was just one-on-one, a personal conversation.
Yes.
So how did April's Puerto Rican identity shape her experience of obligation, family, freedom, and what do you most want readers to understand about April's decision to leave?
Okay, so a two-part question.
Mm-hmm.
The question about her Puerto Rican identity, I think, is really interesting, and I still think about that in relation to that character. Maybe I'm nothing like April Soto. I mean, I've never gotten in a physical fight in my life, okay? Like, it's really a fictional character, and yet, because it's so fictional, because it's the most fictional character I've ever written, I also feel like it's the truest character I've ever written. I could put myself in her. Because no one would say, "Oh, is that you?" Because people know, they're like, "That's not you." And one thing now that I'm 48, for a long time, when I wrote In the Heights, when I wasn't even 30 yet, I was Nina. I was the daughter. Now, at this point in my life, I'm not Nina anymore. I'm not Noel Soto. I'm April Soto now. I'm the mother. I'm still a daughter. My mother is still with us, and I still have a very close relationship with her. But one thing I wonder as I look back on my girlhood, and I had a very matriarchal family. It was like abuela, all the tias, all the titis, all the primas, like all the comadres, all the madrinas, like so many women. And especially thinking about my abuela, there was a cultural value that was instilled in me, and it was very important, about being servicial, being humilde, basically being of service and being humble, as a really important and honorable virtuous way to live life. And I really value that, especially as our nation becomes more and more materialistic, and as billionaires run everything. I think the power and strength in being humble and being of service is an incredibly important virtue. But I think it can tip easily into subduing one's truth and not fighting for one's more rebellious instincts. And I see that trade-off in my abuela's life. What did it cost her? What did the amount of love she provided me? She provided the community. She provided every hungry neighbor who went through her door. What price did she pay for that? What did that cost her? And that's a question I was asking when I wrote The White Hot. What is the price of a Boricua woman's love? What is the cost, the price tag that comes with that? I think it's universal in a motherhood way, but I also think it's very culturally specific.
Yeah.
And then the other question was her decision to leave.
Yeah. What do you want most readers to understand about April's reason to leave?
I did a weird thing with the book, which is I wrote, the part of the story I'm telling is the moment that April leaves. And the reason I'm telling that part is because it tears her apart. It's very hard for her. She loves her daughter. She also discovers along the way she kind of loves herself. That's new information for her. But I could have written the story, I could have kind of rewound the tape and written the story up to 6 months before this. And that would have been the story of a mother who stayed. Actually, she stayed for 10 years in her daughter's life, and the dad left. She gave up her education. She's a very smart young woman, and she stayed. So I'm telling the story of the second half of that, but I like to advocate for the part that's unwritten, actually, which is she got her daughter very far, and she found a father who needed to step up to the plate and raise a young Puerto Rican woman too. And that's why the part of her going to the father's house is very important in the book, because she has to vet him. She has to make sure he's suitable for the task, and she's not going to let him get away with it. You know, this is his child too, and her daughter deserves a father. If you ask my husband, you ask my daughter, they have different points of view on it. My husband says absolutely, she saved her daughter. And my daughter's like, I don't know. My daughter's a little more conflicted on that.
Yeah. So when I was reading the book, I picked up on several themes. And some of the themes that I wrote down was generational trauma, inherited rage, motherhood versus personal freedom, the expectations placed on women, especially Latino women, a spiritual awakening and self-discovery, and complicated relationship between love and abandonment. So was this novel meant more as a story about freedom, survival, healing, all of the above, or something else?
I think this novel, I think something that happens with, I think of the Boricua community, the Puerto Rican community, and the diaspora community as travelers. We're pilgrims.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not like we started at point A and came to point B. No, my elders traveled to different places in the island when natural disaster made them leave their home, when work made them leave their home. And then they came to the United States and they went to different places too. And so I think one of the themes is, how do you stay true to your gut, to your spirit? When you're moving, when your upbringing and reality is very different than your elders and is very different than your children's, how do you not lose the tether? I think that's one of the themes. How do you find your individual truth within a very strong community? And what's the give and take of that? And the other thing is inheritance. Can you love your elders and also say no thank you to the inheritance? That's why I think it's not just a straight up trauma novel. It's not, no, you traumatize me and I have to break free from this. I don't think it's that. I think it's, I love you and we share trauma together. And I'm going to give this back to you today and say no thank you. I can't hold this anymore. And that's why I think this answers the earlier question too about why did she leave. She doesn't leave. April doesn't leave because her daughter got in another fight at school. She doesn't leave because she has to take anger management. She doesn't leave because she's frustrated at her job. She leaves. The moment that she decides to leave is when her daughter smashes the plate and Abuela grabs the broom and starts sweeping up the pieces. That's what makes her break, because she thinks my daughter's going to inherit the broom. And I'm okay that I inherited the broom, but I don't want my daughter. That's when she knows, no, I don't want my daughter to inherit the broom. If a plate needs to break, a plate needs to break, but we're not going to sweep it under the rug anymore. And so that's the tricky balance. How do I leave what I love? I think that's very hard. I think that's a lot harder than how do I leave something that just straight up hurt me.
Yeah, that's pretty deep. When I was reading your book, I got a lot of introspection for myself because when I was young, my mom left myself and my younger brother when I was 12 and he was 8. And I never really understood the reason why she left until years later, as you grow and you learn and realize, oh, now I understand why she left. And I can now offer forgiveness because she left, you know, a situation that she just couldn't bear anymore, but she still loved her kids. So, yeah, it was a pretty meaningful book, and some of the struggles that April went through. And you focused a lot more on April and not so much more on Noelle.
Yeah, so I could have written it in third person and made it more like equal about their points of view back and forth.
Right.
And I tried. It wasn't as interesting a book. And that's why I had to have the bookends at the beginning and at the very end, some from Noelle's point of view.
Yeah, which brings me to that next question. Why did you choose an ending that feels kind of open rather than fully resolved? And what do you think Noelle understands at the end that she can understand as a child?
So I think at the end of the day, the book is a question.
Mm-hmm.
And you discover as you write. I didn't totally understand that the book I was writing was the question, and the question was, at the end we got Noelle, and she goes to this return address, and she looks through a window, and she sees, mute. If you haven't made it to the end yet, mute for a moment. But she's looking through a window, and she sees a stranger. And she looks like that stranger. The stranger looks like her. And it's her mom. And when I arrived there, I felt like the book was complete, and I felt like what I learned about the book was that it was actually all asking a question, which is, can we ever see our mom? Here's Noelle looking at her mom, looking through her own reflection in the glass at her mom. Can we ever see our mom separate from our need for them? Can we see them as themselves? Is that even possible? And if we can, what comes next? Can that possibility open new doorways? And I don't know the answer to that question, but I think the book ends on that question, which is, what does Noelle see? And is what she sees liberating? Because I think she sees a woman that is her mom. She doesn't see
And for
mom.
me, in my experience, that's what I think it came to me. I saw my mom as a different person, as an individual person, and as a woman, not so much as a mother. So hopefully Noelle will see her mom the same way. What conversations do you hope the book would start among mothers and daughters? What kind of conversation?
That's always hard for me to predict in advance, but I will say something I heard. I mean, to be quite honest, like, my sister read the book and she called me. We're very close. She's my baby doll, and she's my baby sister. And she was so relieved that a lot of the difficulty, pregnancy was very hard for her. It really destroyed her health. Her health will be compromised forever, and she lives that reality every day. In addition to having the challenges of having a child, who's needy. And I think she felt tremendous relief at having this story of a woman who also was not just like wellnessing her way to perfect motherhood and perfect womanhood, but was like, this is really hard and I'm a freaking mess. I'm a mess and I have no answers. Like, I'm just trying to survive. And so that was really cool when she called me and she shared that response with me. And so maybe I hope the book just gives us all permission not to run away and leave. Like, I didn't write the book because I want to leave. Like, I'm a family lady. Like, I'm staying with my family, but I hope the book gives us permission to not have to be perfect, not have to be the answer to everyone's troubles, just to be ourselves.
And sometimes we don't know how as mothers, because you take on a different role.
Yeah.
And sometimes you lose yourself in that role.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There was a question from one of the readers that asked how you chose the names for your characters.
I chose April because it's a spring month, and I felt this was a time of this was a book about rebirth and coming back to life, and so that's why I chose April. I don't remember why I chose Noelle, but my husband and I, we had a long dialogue. He read it and he felt that it was pronounced Noelle, which I would have spelled it differently, and I really loved that, Noelle, but I was like too used to Noel at that point to change it. Mama Suset. You know, these are little like weird writer things, but I don't. Abuela, I had a Abuela Omara, so I didn't. I wanted there to be only one female name that ended in A. So Suset was nice because it ends with that kind of like hard consonant, and same with Noel and April. But April's really the name that kind of was the post.
Okay. If readers walk away with one emotional truth about the book, what would you hope it is?
Maybe it's the sense that freedom is not glorious, but that it is the most challenging, the ongoing most challenging task of our lives, and yet it's worth it. It comes with a cost. I think a woman's freedom, no matter what form it takes, it comes with a cost. And just the ability to see that head on. This has a price tag. I might not know what it is, but I'm going to get something I want, and I'm going to see if the world ends because of it. And if the world doesn't end, you know, I'm going to accept the smaller repercussions of freedom. I think this nation, like, really makes freedom such a meaningless word. Like, it's all unicorns and rainbows. Like, no, that's not what freedom is, actually. Freedom is a struggle. It's labor. It's a labor of love.
Yeah, it is. And then I think more so for women and Latino women. Yeah. Well, the book was a wonderful write. I really enjoyed reading it and just trying to learn what I could about it. The last two questions I want to ask has to do with if you had advice for someone who wanted to or was thinking about writing a novel, what advice would you offer them?
I think take your time. It's weird. It's like you get the impression that people are out there like writing every day, and then in like a year or 2 or 3 years they put out a novel. Like, that's not how anything I've ever written has come together. This book took me 10 years to write. That wasn't me writing full time, but that was me having an idea, letting it be, letting it live, letting it gestate like a seed, letting it germinate. Is that the right word? And I think that rather than sitting, the act of writing being like, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to make it happen. Sitting down and writing is part of writing, admittedly, but I think the much bigger part of writing is proceeding through your life as an antenna, being open to the signals and receiving them. They might come from your own heart, they might come from your own mind or spirit, they might come from something you observe or see or remember. Just be an antenna, be open. Don't force the book to happen, be open to the book developing. And it will surprise you. And then you just got to be on hand to take notes. You know, when that antenna picks up a signal, run and grab a pen and paper or get your notes app on the phone and jot it down. And it can become an organic process that can surprise you over time. And if you take your time, an added bonus is the book will grow and mature with you. You know, if you write a book in like a year, in 2 years, it's going to be a very finite document of one period stage of your life. Whereas if you let a book grow over time, if you hit a wall with it, it's not writer's block, just let it be. It'll let you know when it wants you to come back to it. And then you have a piece that's maybe more mature because it's traveled with you through a few stages of growth.
Thank you for that. So what's next on your horizon? What are you currently working on?
I'm working on a play that's also about breaking stuff to grow. I guess this is the theme I like a lot. This play is about it's a real story. It's a play about a dining hall worker, a black dining hall worker at Yale University who smashed a racist stained glass window and was fired from his job, but changed the history of this institution for the better. He forced Yale to be a more just place for all students, but especially for black students, for black locals, and for black employees. And so I've been in conversation with this worker, and he loved working at Yale. So he's got a very soft and gentle spirit, and yet he broke this window and changed an institution's history, an elite institution's history. And so I've been in conversation with this gentleman for about 10 years to understand
Nice.
how this soft-spoken soul decided to break something and change it for the better.
Well, we look forward to seeing that and hearing more about it. Well, Quiara, thank you again for being part of our podcast. We always enjoy having you, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the great questions, everyone, and for taking the time to read books.
Okay. Gracias, comadres. Our second interview is with Lauren E. Rico, an award-winning author of twisty, emotionally resonant fiction that explores family identity and the secrets we keep. Her latest novel, After the Ocean, captures the beauty of Puerto Rico in a dual timeline family mystery that weaves together themes of identity, secrets, and forgiveness. Interviewing Lauren is Comadre Carmen Zayas, a lifelong storyteller at heart with a background in communications and journalism. Carmen is passionate about thoughtful conversation, cultural identity, leadership, and the stories that shape how we see ourselves and one another. Take it away, Comadre Carmen.
Thank you so much. Hi, Lauren. I'm so glad
Hi.
you're with us today. Absolutely. I'll just start off by saying, absolutely love the book.
Oh, thank you.
Right? It's that mystery that is just riveting, but there's so many layers underneath it that just makes you keep reflecting on all the different parts of it.
Thank you. And let me apologize in advance. I'm a little hoarse, but I think we'll be okay.
I'm so glad you're here. I'm so sorry for your report.
That's all right. No, it's good. It's all good. Thank you so much for having me. It's very exciting.
Very good. So my first question is, you already had this great career as in classical music and in classical music and broadcasting. What drove you or what inspired you to take up writing fiction?
I didn't plan to take it up. I mean, I've always been an avid reader, and certainly storytelling existed in my broadcasting work, creating atmosphere and emotion and connection. These long dead composers, trying to bring them to life to listeners. But I never seriously thought I'm going to write a novel someday. And then, I don't know, maybe 13 years ago, my mother died very suddenly and unexpectedly, and then just 4 months later, I had a breast cancer diagnosis, and it just completely upended me emotionally. And I just went into a pretty deep depression spiral. And that's when my therapist suggested writing as a way to kind of process some of the grief and the anxiety, the fear. And what surprised me was how much solace that I found in it almost immediately. Writing became this place where I could make sense of emotions that just felt overwhelming otherwise. And over time, it stopped being just therapeutic and it became something much bigger creatively. But even now, I think writing remains deeply connected to healing for me. It's probably why I never stop writing. I like to say I'm like the shark that has to keep moving to have the water over its gills for oxygen. I have to keep writing to keep the depression at bay, to process things. So I didn't intend to, but it's the way the universe or God or fate kind of led me. So being a novelist, it wasn't reinventing myself. I was like discovering this part of myself that I didn't even know I had or that I needed.
Good, thank you. And a lot of those, the words that you use, reinvention, right, discovery, healing, there's a lot of that in that book, in your book. And
Yeah.
so when you were sitting to write this particular book, After the Ocean, what was the emotional questions that you were seeking to answer?
I guess, I hadn't really thought about it until just this second. Clearly, I have unresolved issues about my mother. I think we all do. I was really interested in this idea that we never fully know our parents, especially our mothers. As children, we tend to see them only in relation to ourselves, as if their lives began the day we were born. And I was fascinated by this idea that the daughters, Meg and Gracie, they see their mother as fragile and vulnerable, when in reality, she survived extraordinary things long before they ever existed. She had this entire buried history, this life forged through trauma and sacrifice and survival. And she had to keep it hidden from pretty much everybody in order to protect them for decades, and lived in fear of, of the other shoe dropping constantly. So in many ways, the novel, it becomes a story about daughters kind of slowly realizing that their mother is maybe not who they thought she was, not weaker, far more complicated, resilient. And I also loved the almost like, I don't know, it was like a mythic feeling of the daughters following Amelia back into this place that represents both heaven and hell for her. She's returning to Puerto Rico, hoping on some level to recover pieces of herself, her husband, her past, the woman she was before everything shattered, the little girl she was before her life was destroyed and Puerto Rico became this, it had been her beloved paradise, and it became just this tragic setting later. Meanwhile, her daughters, they think they're going there to save her. And that reversal really fascinated me emotionally. The realization that sometimes the people we think we're rescuing are actually the ones who have been protecting us all along.
Thank you. And that comes through very deeply in the book.
Thank
So
you.
Emilia, Gracie, Meg, they're all navigating identity and loss and love and truth in such different ways. Help me to understand, when you wrote each one of those three characters, the different pieces that you were looking to find of different ways to cope with loss and grief, right? Because they're each doing it in their own way.
Yeah, they are. And it's all kind of, I guess it's all, yeah, it's almost like each one has their own vehicle for processing the grief and loss in different ways of their lives, and dealing with the fact that they are not who they thought they were going to be. Amelia's life shattered when she was very young, but she rebuilt it. And it was off to such a promising start. And at the beginning of the book, we see that. And then that shattered and it becomes something totally different. And then 30 years later, it shifts again. So with Amelia, everything is about her daughters. Coping with her grief is kind of secondary to protecting them, which I think is what happens a lot of times, especially with women. They tend to tamp down their feelings and their deep emotions to put on a face and protect the people around them, and they don't have necessarily anybody to confide in. So I think Amelia carried her grief. She had to just console herself almost always. I think, Gracie thought she was going to be this spectacular musician, and she was well on the road, and then this terrible accident happens and upends that, and she spends years grieving that loss. Even as she builds this spectacular life for herself, it's just never enough. It's never ever enough. And her sister Meg is partially responsible for why Gracie's life took such a turn. And Grace, but she was a little girl when this happened, Meg. So she carries the grief of kind of the guilt, certainly, of, possibly killing her sister's dreams. And also wondering where she fits into this. She is not, her sister is not her full sister. She's her half sister. And there's always this bit of disdain and irritation under the surface from Gracie, who really has, she secretly, and maybe not so secretly, resents her sister for not only taking her dream away, but then not to give anything away, but Meg goes on to live her sister's dream, the one that she had to abandon. So there are so many things that they grieve in their own lives, irrespective of the people that they grieve, these things, the women that they end up grieving themselves and reinventing themselves and having many, many lives. I'm sorry, I know that seems very complicated, but there are so many moving parts to this book.
And that's what makes it, I think, what makes it such a reflective read, right? You read it and you read it on one level, but there's so many nuances that it's just so, like I said, you read it and then you go back and you go, oh, what about this? Just like you were saying, but wait, how would I have felt with this? And so
writing it was like that too. Writing it was like that exactly too. You don't even realize how it's like opening up a can of worms. You pull one thing, another thing comes. It just, one thing leads to another, leads to another. So it's, yeah, it's
Which is
emotional
another
writing.
one, which is another one of my questions is what in doing that, and the book felt that way. It felt like there was all different kinds of boxes, sometimes Pandora's boxes being open. What was the thing that surprised you the most?
About writing it or about how the story came
I'm so
out?
sorry. I would imagine that as you're writing it, different things are popping up, and you're like, "What about this layer?" And I'll pursue this, and what about this? Just something that surprised you about
Well, it's
the writing of the book. Yeah.
what I'll say, Kiara was talking about the writer things and the characters. They kind of take on a life of their own, which if you've not written anything like that, sometimes people think you're strange, but the characters do what they want to do. You can try and cram them into a box, but they're not, the words won't work, the story won't work, the scene won't work if it's not what the characters want. And you end up writing and rewriting until you get it the way they want it to be. They take on these personalities and become these three-dimensional things. So I think I was surprised. Oh gosh, I was surprised by Amelia's capacity to love her daughters as fiercely as she did and to hate her mother as much as she did, to resent it, and how hard it was for her until the very, very end to not even entertain forgiving her mother. And Amelia kind of unraveled, she unfurled to me as because I saw her grow up on my pages. When I first, write her, she's 21 years old, and 30 years goes by, and after that, she's a mother of two, she's a divorced woman, a lot of things have happened. So the way she shaped and changed and how fierce she became surprised me. And, when she and her daughters are in Puerto Rico and she's in the company, she's in the same space as her mother, not necessarily, she's on the same island as her mother, and she's being encouraged to see her mother who's dying. And she's like, no, I know what it is to be a mother now. And I would lay down my life, and I have laid down my life for my children. And my mother not only didn't protect me, she put me in harm's way. So that fierceness came out of her, and it surprised me. And it made, when she eventually did find the capacity to at least entertain forgiveness, that dimension to her surprised me. So it's always about what the characters do. They always surprise me. I'll always be writing. I'm like, oh, no, wait, no, what? I'm as surprised as you are as I'm writing. I'm like, wait, what? No, oh my gosh, what a twist! Who knew? So yeah, I'm constantly surprised by crazy things that they do.
Good, thank you. And I too, I kept waiting, like, when is she going to slip into forgiveness mode? So
You
it was
want
very
it.
intense.
You want it. And that's such a main theme with I've realized like I have such a compulsion towards redemption. I have to redeem the bad, not every bad guy, because there are some bad guys that just you can't, not everybody can be redeemed. But I try so hard to show, look, when we're younger, we see things, I think, in very black and white. When you don't have a lot of life experience behind you, things are very black and white. There's good and bad. People are good, they're evil. And that's why sometimes forgiveness is harder, I think, when you're a younger person or with a person just maybe with less life experience behind you. I think as we grow older and we make our own mistakes, and we hope for forgiveness, and we realize that we're not perfect, and we are able to extend more grace to the people around us. So as I write these books, it makes me feel so good to redeem people, the characters. Blaine, who is so hateful in the beginning, but he's also very young, and he's a product of the man who has raised him and the world that he has lived in and his own anger and frustration. And why should my brother be happy when I'm destined to this hell? Why shouldn't he? I think at one point he says, why shouldn't he pull up his own share of the family misery? Why do I have to wallow in it myself? He should come and take it. Why he has no right to be happy. And I'm going to be the one to show him that. So you'd think he's irredeemable. But then when he realizes the consequences of his actions later on, and he has to work really hard to convince Amelia, how much he's changed. I mean, even the mother, Evelyn, who you see just so briefly, we see her that she's this terrible, not a terrible character, just a woman who's just so under her husband's thumb, and she's, alcoholic and drug addled. And she finally, we learn off the pages later on that she finally came into her own and claimed, she stood up for her son and protecting him. And I love that. I love this sense that everybody, even Cesar, everybody in the end, is redeemable. I never want to leave you. I never want to leave a book club thinking, well, that was a bad ending. That was depressing. I'm never going to read that book again. I want you to have hope. I want everything to be all the loose ends tied up without it being in such a neat bow that you're like, that was predictable. I want it to be thoughtful with something to think about, but that these are real people who we love and we hate. And hopefully by the end, it all adds up to a good story.
And it does. And you keep, which I love, answering some of the questions I have. But with Blaine specifically, honestly, it took me a while to come around to, I was like Amelia. I was like, I don't know. I'm not buying this.
Yeah, we're not buying it.
It's what you just said comes across in the book, that you don't lean into cynicism, which I think would have been very appropriate in something, right? There is this overwhelming sense of you can be redeemed. And I'm glad you spoke to Blaine, because that was kind of like a question mark in my mind was, could he have really been? So thank you for doing that. So obviously music is a huge part of your life. It is, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I saw the way you brought in classical music into the book at different places. Talk to me a little bit about that, how you approach that.
So, I have this 36-year career as a classical music broadcaster. I thought I played the French horn, the one that's on all the Christmas cards, right? I have a master's degree in the French horn because I thought I was going to be, principal horn of the New York Philharmonic. The problem was I was not very good. But what I was really good at was broadcasting, and I managed to get, as a young student, I managed to get in at the college station, and I kept getting job after job after job, even if after I was flunking audition after audition after audition. It was my grandpa Rodriguez who finally said to me, honey, clearly this is where you can always play, you can always have fun, but this is the direction you're supposed to be going in. So I built this wonderful career based on music, which is great. And when the writing thing came along, I thought they don't write a lot about, they don't describe music because there aren't very many ways to describe music in words without humming a tune. Or if you're a musicologist, I can say, well, and then there was a third and it leapt to a fifth and then down to, you're a musicologist or perfect pitch, you can maybe get it. But how do I, capture that in a way that people who are just reading the words on the page will have some sense of what it sounds like and maybe say, hey, I want to hear that. I want to hear that. So I've done it in previous books. I've dabbled in a lot of romance and things like that, where I really played with that and some other weird thrillery things. But so I love this idea of using visual images to kind of capture what's happening in the music. So you have Meg on stage in this competition, and she's playing the Tchaikovsky piano concerto, which you may not think but you've probably heard it because it's a very dramatic piece and it's been in commercials and on TV and things. So capturing that, it was just so exciting. I listened to it a million times and think, what does this make me think of? Like this drum roll coming out of out of the fog, out of the ether, this whisper, and these horns coming in lockstep, these chunky chords. And then to describe Meg, she's like, it's such a physical piece and she's such a small woman and she's all over this keyboard, up and down, and the whole thing is shaking and you feel like you're on this wild ride. That's what I wanted to capture, the intensity of it. But then on the flip side, you have the music thread with Paul and Amelia, and this Bach sonata that they play together is, I think, one of my favorite lines that I wrote is, they play together, and the piano part, it's very structural, right? It's very structural. Whereas if you think about keyboards, and piano pieces, it's not a long extended sound. It's a lot of different, maybe you play chords, but they're individual notes that go away pretty quickly. You can't sustain a single note too long. But something like a cello, it's as long as you can draw the bow across the string. It's a long, languid, connected melody, or can be, so I think I describe it as, he was the flesh, she was the bone, and together they were complete. and I loved this idea that he waited for her. He wouldn't play that piece with anybody but her. He waited 30 years and he didn't even know he was waiting for her. He just knew he was waiting for something, for someone. And when she sat down and played with him, everything just changed. I love that. And this idea, I'd like to describe the Bach. The music spills out, it tumbles out, it shatters and falls, and it's all around them. So I try to make it a very palpable thing that you can imagine as you're reading. So can you tell I get a little excited about it?
That came through. So having already known of your background, reading the book, it was still amazing to me how effortlessly you made the music come alive.
Oh, thank you. That's like best compliment ever. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it was, and I was like, that's amazing because you do. It's part of the story, a wonderful part of the story, but
It
it's
is.
still
It's a character.
you
It's
stop,
a character.
you
Yeah.
stop and that flesh and bones analogy. I read that like 3 times. I was like, darn, that's good.
I know. I go back and I'm like, wow, I wrote that? What? Sometimes, it's funny because sometimes I think any writer will tell you, sometimes like you trance, you're in the zone and you write. I think Quiara was saying something about, writer's block and just, stop and let it gestate and come back to it and more sure story. And that really is what happens when you're ready to write it. It's ripe and it spills out and hopefully, and so that will happen to me. I'll write all night and I wake up the next morning. I'm like, I don't recognize any of the words. I'm like, I wrote that. Or later on, much later, I'll hear. I've been working. I have a new book coming up in August, and they're casting the narrators for the audiobook. And they had me listen to a few and decide, which ones I wrote, which ones I preferred, and I picked them. And I had mentioned to the producer, I said, it's very exciting because when the audiobook comes out, I sit there listening to it in the car. And it's like I'm listening to somebody else's book. Like I have no idea what's going to happen. Even though I wrote it, I know what's going to happen. But I'm like, oh, oh my gosh, I can't believe I have to hear that again. It's like somebody else's work. It comes alive in a whole different way. So yeah, it's kind of cool.
You ventured into. I think we have time for 2 more questions. Ventured into one of my last questions, which was what's on the horizon? What's next?
I have I've changed publishers from Kensington. I'm now an Amazon author with their Thomas and Mercer mystery thriller imprint. So I've essentially written a story like Familia and After the Ocean in the same vein, same tone and timbre, but they're publishing it as a psychological thriller. Go figure. But it's got that same depth, that same, emotional connection, and it has to do with a young set of a couple of young women who uh, they meet at college and figure out that they're identical twins who were separated at birth, and their story explodes and they become like this pop culture phenomenon, influencers, all of these things, and very tumultuous relationship in playing out in the press. And so what happens is they go into the Everglades on a camping trip, a canoeing trip. One of them comes out alive. One is half dead, and they're discovered, and nobody knows what happens because the one who's alive isn't talking. They're not even sure which one she is, and because they have this contentious relationship, there's no idea. So this is down in Miami, and so the doctors at the hospital who have the girl there, they decide to call in a psychiatrist who was one of their own. She'd been a resident there 10 years earlier, and she had the very distinct experience of having lost a twin in a very public way, in a very traumatic, highly publicized accident. That had the whole world watching. It was like on a glassy, big glossy article in People magazine. And, she couldn't grieve. The whole world was watching her grieve. So she had this very unique experience. And they thought, well, if anybody can come in and will know how to deal with this young woman in a way to help her and maybe to figure out what happened, we're going to bring in this particular psychiatrist, Jen Flores, a Cuban American who was living in New York because she left that hospital under very bad circumstances. Terrible. She swore she'd never come back, but she comes back for this to work with this young woman. And so we go back and forth in time, figuring out how these two twins met, why they were separated at birth. Jen kind of gets to the bottom of that while also kind of dealing with her own unresolved grief over losing her twin and at a very young age and progressing. Her sister ceased to exist at the age of 15, but she continued to have the life and hit all these milestones. Thank you. I know I tried to be mesmerizing. That's a great, thank you. Going through all these milestones that she's left her sister behind and that tremendous guilt and dealing with it. And also coming back 10 years later with a chip on her shoulder, like, you people threw me out and I'm back and I'm going to crush this. But it's so much deeper than that. But again, I even get to redeem some of the bad guys. So that makes me very happy. And maybe somebody who you didn't think was a bad guy is a bad guy. And I'll tell you also, my favorite part is I put a good husband in there because I love a good husband and there aren't enough of them in books. So there you go.
Very good. Thank you so much. And I'm so looking forward to that.
August. I'll tell you, that's coming out in August. That's called Mirror Image. And it's available for pre-order now. So
Well, you know who's going to be pre-ordering very soon. And off the chat line, you are mesmerizing. I've so enjoyed this conversation. And I wish you the very best. And
thank you for having me. It's so lovely. I love this. I'm so grateful for the opportunity. And yeah, this was great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you all. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to our authors and their publishers, One World Penguin Random House and Kensington Publishing, for generously donating books to our early registrants. Special thanks to our incredible interviewers, Comadres Kim and Comadre Karen. We appreciate our audience for joining us tonight and submitting thoughtful questions. Most importantly, we want to recognize our dedicated volunteers without whom this book club and its associated work would not be possible. Mil gracias. Supporting Latino authors is crucial to our mission. We encourage you to write reviews on platforms like Amazon, Goodreads, Barnes & Nobles, as these reviews significantly impact publishers and potential readers. Consider purchasing books to directly support our authors, and if your library lacks a title you're interested in, don't hesitate to request they order it. We invite you to attend our virtual local book club meetings and bring friends along. Remember, our book club is open to men and women, Latinos and non-Latinos. All are welcome. Looking ahead, our June 2026 books are When the Tides Held the Moon by Vanessa Vida Kelly and Sink or Burn by Christy Road Carrera. Thank you all for your continued support of Las Comadres and Friends National Latino Book Club. Please join us in celebrating our 20th anniversary by buying books supporting Latino authors. We applaud and amplify diverse literary voices throughout the year. Good night. Thank you again for joining us, and always read Latino Lit.
Just want to take a minute and wish Carmen a happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Carmen. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. Mil gracias, Nora. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Bye.